And now, broadcasting live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts now.
All right, here we go. We are live on a Tuesday here with yours truly. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show, wherever and however you may be watching and listening. Live on all platforms known to man, Roku, iHeartRadio, and all social media platforms for you to like, follow, subscribe, hit the bell button. We are close to meeting our goals. Let's keep it going. No Chase tonight, so it's a solo show. But boy, am I getting everything cooking here tonight. Thanks for making us a part of your day. Got a lot to unpack and a lot to really explain about week 3 going into week 4. So much to talk about in the NFL. Well, with it being started, let's start by talking about this. Once those moves were made, when no receivers now are on this roster, a lot of you decided this team, the Buffalo Bills, were not going to look great. They were going to regress. It was going to be a hard time for Josh Allen to really get this team going and get over the hump, regardless of the wide receivers. Well, look at that. Josh Allen appears to be fine. The Bills last night gave an absolute ass kicking to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I can tell you what, right now, I'll get to them in a second, but this is probably the most comfortable Buffalo Bills now that you are seeing. Josh Allen has receivers that are not acting like divas or are disappearing in the most important times in the season, or let alone close to getting into the playoffs. He has guys that can produce: Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, James Cook, and not to mention, look at Dalton Kincaid. I mean, this is now an offense that's not completely and heavily reliant on one weapon that moves the needle of this offense. And I know what a lot of people are thinking. Well, they've never really faced against tough competition yet. I get that, but it's coming. All right? But the one thing that you could honestly be happy about the Buffalo Bills is that they are not sitting there at 3-0, and they are desperate for a guy like Stephon Diggs. Once they drafted Keon Coleman, it was clear. They moved off the contract. They moved off him because there were plenty of reports that things were not looking great. Things were going south for a guy like Stephon Diggs. And he didn't want to be there. So the Bills did the one thing that I'm sure some teams would have done too. They moved off him. Clearly shows they're not overly reliant and dependent on a guy like Stephon Diggs. They're not. And like I told you before, okay, it only took that kind of move for them to move off him, and yet still they look like a playoff team. And I told you it only took moving defensive pieces, okay, because they got rid of old existing contracts. That's what was slowing them down. Guys that were not available, guys that could not possibly end up making the plays because it's not the same drive as it once was. So they moved off those kinds of guys. They also moved off of they've also moved off the drama. They didn't need it. And clearly it shows that Josh Allen is fine. Josh looks happy. Josh looks like he's playing at a better angle now. And that's what it looks like. So if you really think about it, when Joe Brady took over as the offensive coordinator for this team, it changed a lot. Josh Allen was cleaning up a lot of those mistakes. He was cleaning up a lot of those acts. And the best part of that is it changes. Sometimes you got to end up changing some things to make things work. And that's initially with what it needed to be. And if you think about it, look at a lot of the teams, whether it's quarterback, whether it's coach, whether it's coordinators, sometimes you kind of need a change. You need to make a push. And I think that's initially what Buffalo is. Buffalo did not want to see this thing fail. So they did the right thing. They gave Josh Allen help and protection, and they gave him a weapon. And by the way, Khalil Shakir, he looks great. I like him. He's a kid that's got a lot of speed. He bursts, and I think it works perfectly. And Josh Allen could honestly play his good football. So that's the kind of thing you'd love to see. So I think the Bills are in a position. They look good, and I think they could keep this up. And I think at the end of the day, Buffalo was not selling themselves short. I know how a lot of people feel about this. They haven't faced against tough competition yet. But that will come. But Josh Allen has been in this league where he's changed a lot of that. So if you think about it, Buffalo's window continues to stay open. And that's initially because they needed to get a lot of changes out of that building. And they're doing the right thing. They got the right coordinator. Josh is not making a ton of mistakes. He's staying poised, and he's staying exactly as Josh Allen would be. So you got to be happy with that fact. Okay, let me talk about the Cincinnati Bengals for a second. So they lost last night to a rookie quarterback, Jaden Daniels. Well, I'm going to get to him too on this show. But if you noticed it, I may get pushback, but I'm sure that also one of our newest colleagues on the network, Tim, would agree with me. But the Cincinnati Bengals for years have acted like a poverty franchise. Okay, an ownership that tends to be cheap, move off of guys very quickly. This is also an ownership that tends to not pick up where they left off of in some areas. They then feel like they have the quarterback, and the quarterback can do everything. Joe Burrow cannot possibly do everything for the Cincinnati Bengals. Okay, he can't ensure you he can pick off, like he can pick the football off. Okay, on the secondary, he can't end up, being the facilitator at linebacker when you know that you got to end up getting a stop. He can't possibly be the edge rusher to really stop a quarterback in his place and shake up an opposing offense. Joe Burrow can't do that. Joe Burrow also cannot be that receiver that has to be available all the time. Joe Burrow is like many Bengals quarterbacks in history. All feel like they have the weight of the franchise on their shoulders. What does that come with? That comes with injuries, inconsistencies. You're not spending the money in the right positions, especially when it comes to offense. And then you got to end up having a defense to at least make yourselves viable in your division. Because right now the Steelers are 3-0 with Justin Fields. And the Ravens finally picked up a win after kind of a rough start from there. And then there's the Browns, who the Browns, like them, have some dysfunctions, okay, with the Deshaun Watson deal. But Joe Burrow, and this is where we explain it with quarterbacks, because when you look at the Kansas City Chiefs blueprint, okay, winning head coach, a franchise capable of supporting their franchise quarterback. Even though right now their tackles may not look that good, but in pasts, okay, they've had a healthier offensive line. They now have one of the top 10 best defenses, and all it takes is having the right supporter in the room. Travis Kelce. And that's where Patrick Mahomes, he's got the perfect alignment. Okay, every team in the NFL wants something like that. I mean, Joe Burrow wants that. Justin Herbert just got the coach. He wants that. Josh Allen, he wants the change so that he could go up against Patrick Mahomes toe-to-toe and maybe finally finish the score. There are many teams that want that. Okay, and it's tough in this league. Cincinnati, though, when you think about it, have acted like a poverty franchise with cheap ownership. And think about many of the teams that have acted like this. Okay, the Spanos for a long time acted like a cheap ownership because they did not want to pay the coach $15 million or more. And they also did not capitalize on a lot of depth. But now things have changed with the Chargers. It's a culture change now. I hope that they figure this out because this is initially a franchise that has been dealing with the injury bug for a long, long time. The Cleveland Browns, they have always drafted quarterback every single year, and yet the entire organization looks and feels like a mess. But I love Andrew Berry, and I love Kevin Stefanski. This is just the franchise as a whole. The Haslams always having to be desperate. That's why once they got into the Deshaun Watson deal and with the contract looks like now they're trapped. Okay. And Deshaun is not playing like himself. Then you look at, you even look at Jacksonville with Trevor Lawrence. Things are crumbling down. Everyone wants to have a healthier culture lifestyle. Okay. And a lot of these quarterbacks want that. Joe Burrow, as you know, a quarterback out of LSU who built a ton of successes and a guy that really had a stacked roster in college. Okay, and he gets his receiver, Jamar Chase, from that roster. But yet, offensive line seems to be deteriorating. Defense, outside of Trey Hendrickson and a couple others, does not look the same. They're giving up the immense amount of points than what they once were, and a team who did not have an O-line and went to the Super Bowl. It's because they put a lot of that on Joe Burrow. Like, we got Joe Burrow, we're good. No, you can't think that way. And Joe Burrow is the one quarterback right now, as the team is 0-3, they are pissed. He's pissed because initially this team could be playing better. I took the Bengals in that Monday night game, hoping they would come away with a win because they were due up for it, especially with that toe-to-toe game against Kansas City. Regardless of that PI call and the rest of everything that went down, I felt like Cincinnati was due for a win. I was wrong. And they did not come away with it. And it's hard. It makes a lot of quarterbacks feel differently about how the organization's running. But this is what it is. This is how it works in the NFL. The NFL, it's hard to play in this league because anything could possibly happen. But if you do not have the right components to make this work, and especially when you have a franchise quarterback, one more injury, then they could be thinking quarterback. You would be failing this quarterback. You would be failing him because you are thinking like this. You're thinking like a poverty franchise. It's not good. I'm telling you. As bad as it is, this is why you have to change things up. The Bills knew they had to change things up. They got rid of a lot of old existing contracts because they needed to provide support for Josh Allen to ensure that that is intact. That's it. And it pains me because I would love to see the success in Cincinnati. I really, really would. It just pains me to see this. So I look at this right now, and I feel like for Cincinnati, if they cannot get this right, then things like, again, Joe Burrow's not going anywhere. You've already paid him hefty amount of the contract, and yet it has not kicked in just yet. But with this, you don't have at least support system around him, this could get ugly. And we've seen this before. Boomer Esiason, Carson Palmer. I mean, hell, even when you had a time when you had Andy Dalton and AJ Green, how many times was AJ Green getting hurt and the Bengals still couldn't even move the needle? Okay. They could punch their ticket into the playoffs, but they were a wild card or they were a first round exit. I mean, sometimes all it takes is a bit of that push in order for this team to be better. But so I love Joe Burrow. I wish nothing but the best for him. But this is going to continue to get harder and harder if it acts this way. And the Bengals need something better. And the fact that, look, Jaden Daniels is looking like a damn good quarterback. That's why Washington, their success is going to be built upon new ownership, new GM, new coach that teaches them grit. And then there's Jaden Daniels, who was built to be a winner. And that's what they wanted. No, and the difference of it is, though, yes, they got a shaky O-line, but at least they have a Lamar Jackson-esque quarterback, but things are going to get better. The future is very bright. So, but that's why sometimes teams cannot fall off this train. They cannot fall off this train. The second that changes, teams often start to deteriorate. I mean, you have to be better than that. And I feel bad. I honestly felt like Cincinnati had an opportunity and they had a chance, but unfortunately, it did not. It did not make that happen. So, Joe Burrow is so damn good. Like, he's so damn good. And you would hate for something like this to just be wasted away and to be decimated with injuries once again. And that's why I think, if you're Cincinnati, I mean, look, I have interviewed Zach Taylor in the past when they were in the Super Bowl. Okay. And I thought he was a great guy. Felt to me, and I've asked this question before. I've asked it to where this team, with all of its history and with everything going around, it just right now still doesn't feel like it's getting moved forward. That's what scares me. It's what scares me. So I'm hoping the Bengals really do figure this out, but this is not a surprise. It has never been something that has been new, at least to even for Bengal fans, but this is where things really have to change up. Something has to give, and if they don't give this right, then that's where the Bengals, their window might close. And we've seen them in the Super Bowl. We have seen them in these areas and in these situations. There should be no excuses as to why they cannot make this happen. So, again, I feel bad, but they've got to get this right. All right. Truths and clarity, not to mention momentum trains, they are getting shown by the minute. And so that's why I'm like, I'm going to be taking this break, but there's a lot of things that we definitely have to unpack after 3 weeks, and we're getting ready into week 4. And we've got a lot that we have to explain about here next, because we've got to literally talk about a few other states here. The state of the Cowboys, because after with what we've seen, this is why that I've said the Cowboys were going to have a harder time this year than last year gave them. And I'm also going to talk about, and I want to add some context into the word generational talent, because I don't think we contextualize this enough, because maybe it's because it's mainstream media, and that often gets blown out of proportion. It always does. So that's why I think in the midst of all this, this is why this is why that I do believe that with these quarterbacks, when you're looking at Trevor Lawrence or Caleb Williams, I can't use the word generational talent. Not in this league. I'll explain a little bit more about that later on. Right. Well, BetUS has been on fire. It's been on fire all NFL season long, and it continues to get like that. So why haven't you gotten on to the action with BetUS? On it for you 24/7 with the best NFL betting sportsbook in the country and some of the best betting lines, best expertises and analyses to strategically keep you on the edge of your game. And not to mention, too, when you make an account, they got the best account managers to ensure you get the best bang for your buck. And also provide you with fun contests every single week, every single day. BetUS is always there with you, 24/7 sports book in the country. Just by signing up and putting $50 or more to your deposit, 125% bonuses that matches up to $2,000. The more you deposit, the more the bonuses and the payouts become. Check it out for yourselves at BetUS.com. Gambling problem, call the local number in your state. Seek therapy and seek the help that you need because we don't want you to be gambling away. Maybe your children's future or your future. We want you to bet responsibly when it comes to BetUS. So give BetUS a try today. Link in the description. BetUS, where the NFL season begins.
Looking for a show with the best takes and opinions? Want a show with the best coverage around the world of sports? Jam-packed with an all-star interview lineup? Then the best place to find it all, sports and entertainment, is right here. Join Jake Silva on the Snake Sports Talk Show, presented by SeatGeek and BetUS. Weeknights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific on Sports Wave Network.
Listen up, sports fans. Your favorite sportsbook, BetUS.com, is back for our 28th year of NFL action. With the industry's biggest sign-up bonus of up to 200%, BetUS offers our members the opportunity to cash in on all your favorite sports, including NFL, NBA, MLB, and more. We've also got hundreds of new casino games, including the coolest new European slots, and our live dealers are waiting for you at the table. Sign up at BetUS.com today to get into the action. BetUS, where the game begins.
Check out the Con Man live on the Sports Corner, coming to a screen near you, giving you the greatest stories from basketball legends you've never seen before. Sharing their glory, building the toughness, and how they show off their swag. But only one man knows all that, and that's the Con Man. Join Michael Conceição, the Con Man, at the Sports Corner, Fridays at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 Pacific on Sports Wave Network.
It's really interesting to consider the fact that, like, the Dallas Cowboys right now and the current state that they are in. And listen, people think that I pick on the Dallas Cowboys all the time. I really, really don't. I am America's honesty mind. I will be brutally honest to a T. and to a point where people need to understand and realize, no, I do not have the perfect eyesight to just see it. But everybody there could see this from a mile away. You knew that with the Dallas Cowboys, the more that they were running on this kind of team, eventually this was going to look bad. Now, I understand it with where Dak Prescott, you get your quarterback, okay? You then extend your wide receiver, which is important because you're trying to keep your offense viable. Okay, I get that for the Cowboys. I'm not hanging that over their head. But the problem of this is, and by the way, Jerry Jones went on to local radio for the first time ever I think I've ever heard in my life. Okay, the very first time I have heard Jerry Jones take the accountability for the Cowboys right now, their current dysfunction. Because as of right now, I mean, you got Dak and CeeDee Lamb screaming on the sidelines, which is never a good look when you can consider your number one weapon and you can consider your franchise quarterback. It's not a fun feeling. And I think for the Cowboys, you look at too, that rush defense is horrendous. It's not good. I've been saying this now for quite a while. Like, this rush defense continues to be a problem for them. It continues to just deteriorate because if you think about it, when Dan Quinn, who's now the coach of the Washington Commanders, I've said this before, when the Commanders face the Cowboys, okay, Jerry's not going to like this. I know they've got Mike Zimmer, the defensive coordinator, but when you had Dan Quinn, he took a lot of your defensive players. And right now, because I've got Micah Parsons chirping on his podcast, I've got Dak and CeeDee Lamb apparently not on the same pages. And this is looking like it's unraveling. Now, again, they do have a better record when they're facing against dysfunctional teams. And they're facing off against one in a short week. And after you came off of a pretty hard loss against the Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson, who's now 21-1 in the NFC now, if you haven't figured that out. And so the Cowboys cannot afford to make this look bad. They cannot afford that. The Cowboys, you know what's funny? I think of the Cowboys as the trust fund kid in the Lamborghini who always likes to flash it off, show it off. But remember, when you've got that sporty sports car that, like, it drives women crazy, right? They love that stuff. They love sitting in a fancy fast car. But the problem of it is, if you are living in cold weather, which is where I am, you live in cold weather and you're not reliable in it. You're unreliable in the cold weather. Whereas when you look at a Philadelphia, and I know that they've got their problems as well, you got a Philadelphia right now that they, again, I am critical of Nick Sirianni, and I hope that the Eagles really do figure that out situationally. But they are still good. They've got Saquon Barkley. They've got Jalen Hurts. And as of right now, this Eagles team, like we talked about, is a mulligan. But they are still the pickup truck that when it is snowing out there, or you're going off-roading, it's the most reliable vehicle ever. I drive a Toyota Tacoma, most reliable vehicle on the planet. Okay, Toyota trucks always have had a track record of being one of the most reliable truck models in America. It is. And even for it being a foreign distributed company, Okay. Their reliability and the tech, it's completely different. Okay. But if you're the Cowboys, you could go ahead and enjoy that sports car of yours. But the second that you get a ding, or the second that you see one snowflake that goes down and then in comes a snowstorm, don't even bother it. Don't even bother with it. That's where you become unreliable. All right. And that's why when I look at the Cowboys, I don't trust this team. I've said it before and I'll say it again. This is why I think the Commanders could jump over this team. I would. Because honestly, this team, to that extent, defensively is horrendous. And not to mention their run game is abysmal. And the funny thing of it is that they could have signed Derrick Henry. They could have signed him, but they chose not to. And if you think about it, he is not on a hefty contract with the Baltimore Ravens at all. He's not. The Ravens actually got a heck of a deal for this. And it's paying it like, again, the Ravens are going through their own stuff, but that contract there is not as bad. But Dallas, who do you got in the run game that I could rely on? I've said this before, and I've had a bunch of close Cowboy people that have agreed. This is not the same looking team. And in the last 20 seasons, okay, this is the argument. Okay, since 2003, 2004, Philadelphia Eagles, there has never been a back-to-back division winner in 20 years in the NFC East. That's why their division winners always change every single year. The Cowboys have not completely picked up where they left off. Defensively, they got gutted. The rush defense is still continuing to be horrendous, and it's suspect. And when you look at this now, this is exactly what we predicted. This is exactly where I felt like the Dallas Cowboys was going to end up in. Dak reliant, hoping CeeDee Lamb does not have an injury. Defensive, their rush, still abysmal. And not to mention, running game, that's also going nowhere. I'm sorry, but this is the Cowboys team you are now having to watch and deal with. Okay, and I like Dak. You paid Dak $60 million a year. You paid CD a fortune. Micah Parsons doesn't seem to be focused and still is chirping on his podcast. And that's why I think the Cowboys, to this degree, this is why that they need to get serious with this. But only way that will happen is unless the family, the trust fund family, stop hiring people that are within the family tree. Find outside eyes. Okay, go and get outside perspectives. Stop settling for these yes men. Stop settling for these family bloodlines that you already know build a lot of loyalty, and that's all that they care about. And there's not anything that they could look outside the box and find that potential player or potential prospects, and even find the coach that can make that right. And Jerry Jones finally is taking account for this. And Cowboy fans, there was a survey on it where they are the most honest fan base that understands and knows what this is with Jerry Jones and what is going to happen for the Cowboys if they don't get this right in the next 5 years. Good luck with it. Time now for the news.
This is the Hot Press.
And I can't be nice about this. This is what the Cowboys' future is. So let's get into some news from here. So after a big-time win for Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders, Dan Quinn spoke about it earlier and said that he doesn't want the Commanders' past at quarterback to weigh in on Jaden Daniels. Now, Washington's long list of quarterbacks, okay, from last year having Sam Howell to Jacoby Brissett and multiple others. I mean, hell, I remember seeing these quarterbacks from like Jason Campbell, Mark Brunell, Kirk Cousins, Todd Collins, a lot of these quarterbacks. I've seen it long enough with this franchise where there has been a history of a lot of ghosts on, in this quarterback roster. So, Jaden Daniels, as I've said before, he is a Lamar Jackson-esque player because he can move. He's mobile. He can open the pocket up a little bit, stretch out the field, and he's also a play-and-go type quarterback, but he's accurate. I think he's very strong in the pocket. So it was near perfect. But Dan Quinn basically had to say this, protecting his quarterback, but also giving him a little bit more motivation. That I definitely understand our fan base has been waiting for the franchise quarterback. But I also don't want Jaden feeling any ghosts. Making sure he understands there's only one name on the back of that jersey, and that's for him. So Jaden Daniels, he completed 21 of 23 passes, 254 passing yards, and 2 touchdowns while running for one more to help the Commanders go 2-1 on the road. And numerous players called him different and the answer while praising his poise during tense moments of the game. Jaden Daniels, and what people did not realize, is Jaden Daniels is a competitor and he's a winner. But the difference of it is, and I'll explain a little bit more about that after the news, is unlike most organizations like Chicago with Caleb Williams, I'd say Denver with Bo Nix is going to be okay. It's going to be fine. And look, he hasn't thrown a passing touchdown just yet. But he is, in fact, trying to control a lot of those things that we know is challenging in the NFL. And for a lot of these rookie quarterbacks. And I've said it before. Michael Penix and J.J. McCarthy. I know J.J. McCarthy is out for the entirety of the year. But Michael Penix is on that bench right now. But he's learning and developing as he goes because Atlanta's future, they do not want to screw that up. So that is the time where I feel like with Jaden Daniels, I think this was actually a very good fitting with him and with Dan Quinn. Because I honestly do believe that Dan Quinn coaches him up, coaches up grit. And I think that's exactly what Jaden Daniels needed. Because I've watched a lot of the big-time hits he had in the SEC at LSU. And good God, there were times where the football got coughed up. And you can't afford to let that happen. So that's initially with where I am with Jaden Daniels. I think week to week, he's getting better. I think he's also getting much more poised in that pocket. He's starting to look comfortable. Good win. It was a great win. It was a thriller. And not to mention, too, I mean, you look at that game against the Giants last week, and even with a tough situation like it was against a division rival like the Giants, I mean, kudos to Jaden Daniels, like getting the job done and getting it to work. All right. By the way, the Steelers right now are 3-0. And Justin Fields, I love this version of Justin Fields where the mistakes are corrected. He's not rushing himself. He's not feeling the pressure of the organization because the Steelers are a very proud, strong organization with a strong culture. Mike Tomlin went on and said there's no need to name Justin Fields as Steelers quarterback 1. So to start with a 4th consecutive game, as they're going to be playing the Indianapolis Colts this upcoming week, Coach Tomlin declined to name him the starter going forward over Russell Wilson, who's been sidelined with a lingering calf injury. So he went on to say this, because there is no need for Justin Fields to be the permanent starting quarterback, I explained to you the variables of the week. It has not changed. He's going to walk in this building with that mindset tomorrow. And so really, there's no need to. Sometimes in this business, man, there's a myriad of complex decisions that need to be made. I've learned to make them when it's appropriate, and that's not necessary. As we sit here right now, when Russ gets to an appropriate point of health and we have a decision to make, I'll make it and I'll announce it and I'll be ready, transparent, really transparent about it. But until then, I don't care how many ways you guys ask me. I got no intentions of making the decision that's unnecessary at this juncture. So, again, a very strong response from Mike Tomlin. The Steelers, what's interesting about this organization as of right now, I think Justin Fields just looks comfortable. I think Justin Fields with these RPOs, and then not to mention Arthur Smith is taking, he is seriously taking a lot of these guys and is just giving them a deep breath, understanding like these are not situations to rush on. You're not feeling the weight of this organization to any means. I think Justin Fields has gotten himself into a position where Chicago unfortunately failed him. And Caleb Williams is feeling this. That's why I think Justin Fields going into a positive environment instead of throwing him into potentially what may have looked like turmoil. This defense is the number one ranked defense right now in 3 weeks. And they have gone toe-to-toe with a bunch of teams. They've outmatched and they've outcoached the Atlanta Falcons for as much as the score really just showed itself. They went into an out war between Denver and the Chargers. Okay, so the Steelers have a philosophy to where they are making the quarterback look much more comfortable and they're making him look much better and very, very comfortable in these situations. That's the part where I felt like with Justin Fields coming into Pittsburgh, and from what I've seen, this is a much better and a much more accurate version of Justin Fields than I thought I'd ever see in his days in Chicago. But that just tells you how embarrassing Chicago feels right now with all of this. And again, I love Caleb Williams. I do. But I think the part in all of this is that this is the kind of thing that works for a lot of stable organizations. You could see how different Justin Fields looks. Justin Fields feels like right now, and this is working for him. Now, do I think they should honestly go with Russell Wilson? I would say give this thing one more week before you even make an initial change. I understand with as far as the quarterback, the pay, the standout from there. But listen, don't brush past the fact that Justin Fields, this is a much better version of him in Pittsburgh than I thought I've ever seen. And Arthur Smith is showing you exactly what that is. I think he was never meant to be a head coach, but I think he was very much meant to be an offensive coordinator. And I like this version. All right, well, that was the news.
This is the Hot Press.
I've said before that I was going to end up talking about generational talent. Okay, that word, that term always seems to be thrown around by mainstream medias, by a lot of these, these analysts and media press people, all the time. I'm watching it from ESPN. I'm watching it from a lot of these people that often throw out the word generational talent when it comes to the NFL. I laugh about this. I laugh about this stuff all the time because honestly, I get sick of it when they overly use the word generational talent. Like, it is the kind of stuff that makes me cringe because this is where I'm going to contextualize. As America's Honesty Mind, putting things into context is the best thing that can honestly happen in this business. Because honestly, I mean, we know with how things are in a lot of these big media markets, okay, they're going to say whatever that they're going to say. You know, I think of this, I've told people all the time, these are clickbait responses. These are ones that are doing it for clicks, for popularities, and especially for the paydays. Okay, I don't care about that. I think of this as somebody who understands his hometown in Las Vegas and around the sports books. Okay, Vegas sports books always likes to manipulate people when it comes to betting lines, right? Because betting lines often change all the time. Okay, it's not perfect, it's not guaranteed, but that's the reality of it. And sometimes you have to outsmart these books in order to really get the payout. But Vegas will tell you exactly with what they see. A lot of these odds makers, you know, and a lot of these smart-minded odds guys will tell you that's a trap. So when the word generational talent is out there for a lot of these quarterbacks, and I'm going to give you two of those examples, Trevor Lawrence and Caleb Williams. Okay, this is where I contextualize this. Because right now I'm watching the Bears play such undisciplined backyard football right now with Caleb Williams, and it looks like a disaster. Okay, the offensive line did not pick up from where it left off of last year. Okay, it looks like it's going backwards. Okay, I love Tevin Jenkins, but that looks like it's going backwards, and it looks like it's going like a mess. And a lot of people were saying this because they took a wide receiver at pick number 9 and Rome Odunze. Oh, I love the kid. Vegas kid. Shout out to him. Really good kid. But I felt like they could have used an offensive lineman. There was Olu Fashanu. There was Tylese Fuaga. There was multiple offensive linemen that you could have taken if you were going to take a franchise quarterback. Okay, otherwise, you are looking right now with where Justin Fields is in Pittsburgh and why the organization, they like him there because he's young. He's 25. The organization in Chicago failed him. And then you wonder what getting all these weapons, getting all these nice pieces, Chicago still can't shape an offense. And that is very frustrating and that's aggravating because it is a defensive culture. But Caleb Williams, coming from a USC program in Lincoln Riley, okay, there have been many quarterbacks that have come from Lincoln Riley's system that have panned out in the NFL. Jalen Hurts, Baker Mayfield, I would also say bits and pieces of Kyler Murray. All right? And these guys are showing themselves that they are competitive. But right now I'm watching Jaden Daniels last night, and he looked like a damn good quarterback compared to Caleb Williams, who's having to deal with organization dysfunctions. That is literally what this looks like with the Chicago Bears. They do not build offense very well. So when I think of generational talent and when I think about this in the NFL, here's where I'm going to contextualize this. In college football, I'm giving you 5 names that I felt like were generational quarterbacks in college, and there were many of them. Okay, there were so many of them. And that's one of the things that people often get this misconstrued. But the generational quarterbacks that I have seen in college football, okay, Andrew Luck at Stanford, that's a generational quarterback in college because this was a guy who had a very strong pocket presence in Stanford and had a great coach in Jim Harbaugh who played hard and who coached hard. And so with Andrew Luck, that kid had a hell of an arm. Okay, and he was looked at as the number 1 prospect in college. And rightfully so. You know who was another generational quarterback in college? I would also say John Elway, another one of Stanford's products. In fact, John Elway, who had a hell of an arm, okay, very accurate. The Colts were going to want to take him, but he saw the dysfunction in the Colts and he said, yeah, no thanks. Yeah, no thanks. I'm not doing that. So it's one of those things that, like, when you have a dysfunction in your organization, players are not going to want to be a part of that. And that's where I felt like it was a great match in heaven with the Denver Broncos, because it was an organization with the Orange Crush. And then eventually you get Shannon Sharp and Rod Smith and Terrell Davis. That was a team that, with all of that, John Elway was torching guys. But in college, accurate arm, a guy that was a two-way player from baseball and football, and he chose more of his football career. Okay, that's a big generational talent. Peyton Manning, a guy who was a smart mind out of Tennessee. At Tennessee, he was great. A guy that everybody waited for him to be up there in college. Like, they were waiting for him in the NFL. And with what you see with the pocket presence of him was incredible. Trevor Lawrence in Clemson was a generational talent in college. And the reason of that is because had it not been for Trevor Lawrence in Clemson, Dabo Swinney right now, with way things are, would have lost his job already earlier. And so Trevor Lawrence, for as really good as he was, had really good pocket presence, had a strong, accurate arm, and worked with a lot of guys that he had. Okay, and that was college. And one more quarterback to think for you guys as far as generational talent, but I felt like Joe Burrow was insane. He was insane in college. Yes, he had a stacked roster. Yes, it was that kind of moment where they were riding the momentum train. But the thing of it is that Joe Burrow, strong in that pocket, accurate, and a guy that even when he had his tenure at Ohio State, found his home in LSU and completely went off. Mind you, these are the five that I think of, okay? These are the five. So understand that it could be different for everybody else. Now, here's where I'm going to have 5 generational NFL quarterbacks, not college, NFL generational quarterbacks, to contextualize this. Obviously, we're watching him right now, Patrick Mahomes. You all did not watch him that much in Texas Tech. I don't want to hear it. You did not watch him that much in Texas Tech with Cliff Kingsbury and all that. But when Patrick Mahomes came into the league with an Andy Reid, with a Travis Kelce, with a Tyreek Hill, with a really good defense, he's winning Super Bowls. And we know he may not look good right now this year, but they still find ways to win. That's a generational quarterback with a very smart football IQ that understands the level and the severity it is of it, what it takes to be a winner. That's who Patrick Mahomes is. Tom Brady is a generational quarterback for a few reasons, because number one, he may not be that athletic as most of these other quarterbacks are currently right now, but the football IQ, the smart daily grind that Tom Brady would have had to go through. He wasn't even the best college quarterback in Michigan. Okay. He was taken as a late rounder, but then turned around and became a generational quarterback. Isn't that insane? And that's the part where I feel like it gets misconstrued a lot. But he's won Super Bowls. He's been the most trustworthy quarterback, a guy that takes pay cuts because he wants better players around him. And not to mention, too, even with Randy Moss, okay, and when he got to Tampa and got Mike Evans and got Chris Godwin, and he's still, his most reliable target, Rob Gronkowski, even had Julian Edelman. He elevated so many weapons around him. When guys were looking at them like no-namers, he still elevated those receivers because we knew he had that kind of magic touch. That's who Tom Brady is. Peyton Manning in the NFL. Oh, yeah, both in college and in the pros. Okay, Peyton Manning, smart football IQ. Unfortunately, in the first couple of years with the Colts, was a guy that was very gritty. And when they finally got the coach, the Colts finally got weapons. They finally got a couple defensive pieces. And then the Colts, with Peyton Manning, finally won a Super Bowl. But he was a guy that was winning many MVPs. Okay, he was winning MVPs every year. A couple of years that he's had. But he played like he looked like what a quarterback is meant to look like. Okay, that's the incredible part about Peyton Manning. So I think about that and the way that he's elevated the Colts organization and the way that he revived the Denver Broncos after post Elway and all these other quarterbacks that have been around in this organization. He wins 2 Super Bowls and still is probably one of the most beloved quarterbacks in the league. John Elway was another one that was a big-time talent there. Because if you think about it, in the era where you had Jim Kelly, John Elway, and multiple other quarterbacks, that was a great draft class, by the way. Because John Elway, out of Stanford, very accurate, was a guy that literally was just throwing bullets and darts to a lot of his receivers. And still, even while he was getting up in age, was still looking like that kind of quarterback. And that's, I think, what was incredible. So I think, to me, that's where I look at this, and I think John Elway was incredible for that. I also do think a generational quarterback, Joe Montana was very much one that was very smart-minded, a guy that out of Notre Dame was a guy that was winning games. He was a guy that was winning Super Bowls with a very stacked San Francisco 49ers roster. Jerry Rice, Roger Craig, a Dwight Clark, and a defense. The Niners were an empire for a very long time. And Joe Montana also ended up elevating a Chiefs roster by the time that he ended up moving on from his tenure with the San Francisco 49ers. The guy was incredible. And then finally, Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is a generational talent because, like every quarterback, like even Jordan Palmer, who does his quarterback camp, will tell you nobody. He tells every quarterback, you cannot do with what Aaron Rodgers does. Okay, and I'm not saying the Aaron Rodgers right now. When you watched Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay, and from NorCal, when he went to Cal Berkeley, I mean, that was a big thing. I think initially, Aaron Rodgers became the golden child that we knew and loved. And so that, I felt like, was very important. So Aaron Rodgers, with what he does, and not to mention makes minimal mistakes, the guy's incredible. That's why no quarterback will ever do with what Aaron Rodgers does. But that is a generational type talent. That's the kind of stuff that works. That's the kind of stuff that is incredible. And I love Aaron Rodgers like that, but it's a different Aaron Rodgers now. But remember, generational talent from college and generational talent from the NFL are completely different things. Stop using the word generational talent when you look at a rookie quarterback like a Caleb Williams or a Trevor Lawrence, because right now they are not playing it like it. They are dealing with organizations with dysfunctions, and you could see that. Generational quarterbacks are the ones that are smart-minded. They could be physically gifted, but they're smart enough that as long as they have the coach, they have the right system and the right organization, they're a generational talent. Now, not everyone is a generational talent, by the way. Not every one of them. That's why I had to contextualize that, because I have seen a lot of them in college, and there's still more generational talents in college many of them. But we had to contextualize this because it just got annoying, and it was just one of those things I had to clarify. So, all right. We got to bounce up out of here. Appreciate everybody for being up on the show and hanging out with me. Snake Sports Talk Show. Appreciate all of you guys. Roku iHeartRadio. Sponsored by BetUS, one of the best sports books, 30 years in the business in the country, with the best sporting books and the best sporting lines for your money to buy. BetUS, $50 or more to your deposit, 125% bonuses with matches up to $2,000. The more you deposit, the more chances and the more bonuses that you will get for your payouts in every contest that you participate in. At BetUS.com, where the game begins, and also by SeatGeek. $20 off of your purchases by using promo code SNAKESPORTS for your next sporting event. I know I use it all the time. I use it to go to the Dodgers and Rockies game this weekend, Friday and Saturday. I will be there, but I trust SeatGeek for the best prices and for the best seats in the house to enjoy the experience. So check it out yourself. SeatGeek.com. Also on the mobile device, Google Play in the App Store. Jake Silva signing off. We'll see you guys tomorrow on the next edition of the Snake Sports Talk Show. Take care, you guys.